Imagine stumbling across a book that is entirely, hopelessly unreadable. Not because the language is dead and not because the pages are too faded to make out, but because the script it's written in literally doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth. Well, welcome to this explainer on the Voynich Manuscript, the absolute ultimate historical enigma. For well over a century, this incredibly strange, heavily illustrated little text has utterly defeated the absolute brightest minds in cryptography, linguistics, and history. We're talking zero success. So today, we're going to play detective. We'll interrogate the evidence, look at what the physical pages actually tell us, trace its wild journey across Europe, and examine exactly why this text mathematically refuses to give up its secrets. Okay, let's dive into this with a voice from the past that honestly perfectly captures the sheer frustration this book has caused for centuries. This quote is from a letter written way back in 1665, or maybe 1666, by a Prague doctor named Johannes Marcus Marci. He was sending the manuscript to Athanasius Kircher, who was this famous Jesuit scholar in Rome, a guy who actually claimed he'd deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs. Marci noted that the book's previous owner had devoted unflagging toil to decoding it, only to basically relinquish hope when he died. Marci famously called the book a sphinx that obeys absolutely no one. And you know what? Over 350 years later, that sphinx remains completely undefeated.
So what exactly is the world's most mysterious book? I mean, think about this. It was analyzed by top-tier American and British codebreakers from both World War I and World War II. These are the experts who cracked complex enemy military ciphers like it was nothing. Yet the Voynich Manuscript never been demonstrably deciphered, not once. But hey, modern science has at least given us a starting point. Researchers at the University of Arizona radiocarbon dated the vellum pages, and they placed the creation of the parchment squarely between 1404 and 1438. So we are dealing with a physical artifact right from the dawn of the 15th century, likely popping up during the Italian Renaissance.
Section 1. Inside the bizarre pages. The actual manuscript we have today is this roughly 9 by 6 inch calfskin vellum codex. It's penned in a pretty standard iron gall ink with some somewhat crude, inexpensive paints like blue azurite and red ochre added in later. But honestly, the normalcy completely stops there. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer, overwhelming strangeness of what is actually hiding inside those pages. Because we literally can't read a single word of the text, researchers just divide the roughly 240 surviving pages into 6 sections, based entirely on the pictures. First up, we've got a massive 126-page herbal section, just packed with these large plant drawings. Then an astronomical section. That's followed by a biological or balneological section, which is full of unclothed nymphs wading around in green fluids and these fantastical interconnected tubes. Then there's a cosmological section with these obscure fold-out geometric diagrams, a pharmaceutical section with apothecary jars and disembodied roots, and finally a recipe section that's just dense text marked only by tiny little stars. When you really look closely at these illustrations, the anomalies just jump right out at you. In that herbal section, not a single plant is unambiguously identifiable. Zero. Actually, a lot of them look like composite Frankenstein plants. Like the roots of one species are literally attached to the leaves of a completely different one. And in the astronomical section, the zodiac cycle doesn't even start with Aries like it normally does. It starts with Pisces. Plus, you see these medieval TO maps representing Europe, Asia, and Africa, right alongside those bizarre crown-wearing women bathing in networks of green pipes. It all paints a picture of a book that feels incredibly alien, and yet it's somehow made up of totally recognizable European elements. Section 2. A centuries-old paper trail. Let's move to and see how this builds a truly fascinating cold case file. To understand it, we really have to interrogate the chain of custody here. We kick things off in the early 1400s with its creation. By 1599, it's widely believed that the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II actually bought the thing for 600 gold ducats. That was a massive sum back then. He apparently thought it was the work of the famous 13th century philosopher Roger Bacon. Fast forward to 1665, which is when our guy Johannes Marcus Marci sends it to Kircher in Rome. After that, it basically just vanishes. It sits gathering dust in the archives of the Collegio Romano for over 2 centuries. That is, until 1912, when a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich discovers it, buys it, and gives the manuscript its famous name. Finally, in 1969, it was donated to its current home at Yale University's Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library. But here's the thing. That historical paper trail, it still holds secrets. Recently, the Lazarus Project used multispectral imaging on the book, and they revealed faded, previously totally invisible text hiding in the margins of the very first page. Researchers, specifically Lisa Fage and Davis, managed to identify 3 hidden columns. 2 were Roman letters, and 1 was Voynich characters. And guess what? The handwriting matched Johannes Marcus Marci himself. This was a massive micro-mystery breakthrough. It completely proves that back in the 1660s, Marci wasn't just, storing the book on a shelf. He was actively attempting to build a cipher key to decode it. And, well, he completely failed. Section 3. The Codebreakers' Dilemma. So if brilliant owners have been failing to decode this thing since the 17th century, why is it so maddening? I mean, you might be thinking, it's just random gibberish designed to look like a language, right? Well, statistically, it is not. Voynich's adheres perfectly to something called Zipf's law. Now, this is a statistical rule found in natural, organically developed human languages. It dictates that the most frequent word occurs roughly twice as often as the second most common, 3 times as often as the third, and so on. It's a very specific pattern. Furthermore, the lengths of the words and the way they relate to one another, they perfectly mimic actual linguistic structures. It is way, way too perfectly structured to just be some random haphazard hoax. Linguists actually measure the predictability of character sequences in a language using an entropy score, which they call H2. Now, natural languages usually score somewhere between a 3 and a 4, but the Voynich Manuscript, it scores right around a 2. This means its character sequences are highly predictable. In fact, maybe a little too predictable. And adding to this whole headache, handwriting analysis by Lisa Fage and Davis revealed distinct, consistent, stylistic variations throughout the pages. This proves the manuscript wasn't just scribbled down by one lone madman working in the dark. It was actually written by up to 5 different scribes. Think about that. It was a community project. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it reveals the manuscript actually contains 2 completely separate dialects, or encodings, which researchers call Voynich A and Voynich B. Voynich A is primarily found in the herbal and pharmaceutical sections, while Voynich B shows up in the balneological and astronomical sections. They literally have substantially different common vocabularies. And if that wasn't enough, the words seem to be built on a super rigid prefix, root, and suffix structure. Certain characters only ever appear at the beginning of words, while others only ever appear at the end. It's a linguistic structure that is completely unheard of in any Indo-European language. Section 4. False breakthroughs and claims. Because this mystery is just so dense, it constantly attracts sensationalized media headlines claiming it's finally been solved. Take 2017, for example. Artist and historian Nicholas Gibbs claimed the manuscript was a medical manual about women's health, written entirely in Latin abbreviations where every single letter represented a whole word. He was actually commissioned by a television network to find a solution. Sounds neat, right? Well, medieval experts and linguists stepped in and swiftly debunked it. Not only does his theory result in this highly vague text with absolutely no discernible grammar, but it completely ignores the mathematical and structural rules we just talked about. If every letter is a word, the predictable word lengths and that perfect Zipf's law distribution make absolutely no sense.
So, the crucial point is that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Let's look at the 2019 case of Gerard Cheshire. He claimed he translated the whole thing in just 2 weeks using a lost Proto-Romance language. At first, Bristol University proudly published a press release celebrating his work. Big news, right? Well, not exactly. The academic community of medievalists and linguists immediately pushed back hard. They pointed out that his translations relied on circular, self-fulfilling logic. He was essentially just bending the meanings of words to magically fit whatever illustration happened to be on that specific page. It got so bad that Bristol University actually had to formally retract their article and completely distance themselves from his research.
Which honestly leaves us exactly where we started, but hopefully with a much, much deeper appreciation for the puzzle itself. The Voynich Manuscript has survived for centuries. It has confounded emperors, alchemists, elite military codebreakers, and even modern supercomputers. With its multiple scribes, dual dialects, and bizarre botanical and astronomical charts, it remains a stubbornly locked door. So what does this all mean? Will we ever actually find the key to read it? Or is it possible that a 15th century workshop intentionally created an unsolvable puzzle, meaning the unresolved mystery itself is the true purpose of the book? It's like a giant puzzle designed never to be solved. I'll leave you to ponder that one. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning what you see.